Good morning, Laura. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. Man, I got to talk about, because I'll forget about it if I don't start it off this way. I love the design of the book cover. I mean, the color choices, the way that, right away I'm introduced to somebody that I'm going to grow with once I step inside these pages.
Thank you so much.
Were you part of the process of putting the the book cover itself together? Because that's such an important part to the author themselves.
Yes. So the book cover itself was drawn by me and my colorist, Wei Shu, who is a genius when it comes to coming up with different color palettes for each location that's represented on the book cover.
One of the things that I find fascinating with this book is I honestly believe that you are the very first person since the pandemic started that is talking about Wuhan in a very positive way. I love the way, and this is not a spoiler at the end of the book, but you go back home in the story, and it's like, wow, I've not heard that story yet.
Yeah. I mean, how the book came about was I wrote a short webcomic called The Wuhan I Know back at the very beginning of the pandemic in 2020. And when I published it, it was a love letter not only to my hometown, but also to Chinese Americans everywhere who were facing anti-Asian hate and also a reckoning with what was happening in the world. And when that comic went viral on Twitter, that was the first time I realized that my voice and my story had a place in this world. And that's kind of how Messy Roots came out.
I love the way that you openly admit to the readers as well as those that are following you that all of this started because of doodling. You were a doodler, and all of a sudden now you've got an action graphic book here.
Yeah. No, yeah, I doodle all the time. Like my teachers probably hated it, my parents too. And now here I am as an author. So doodling pays off, y'all.
Well, one of the things I've always taught as an author to those that are exploring the opportunity is I'll mention to them, you got to doodle. You got to, and they, what do you mean? I say, when you doodle, you create a relationship with that paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's like muscle memory. You know, the more you do it, the more comfortable you are crafting whatever you want.
In the book Messy Roots, you take a lighthearted approach at it. But the thing is, though, is that I also feel the power of positive thinking. You as a writer, you really do come across that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, that's in a time where it's so harrowing, not just with Chinese-U.S. relations and anti-Asian hate, but I talk about being queer in the book and, you know, with so much of that happening in the society around us today, it's hard to have hope for what can be the future. But I wanted to represent not only the really hard and traumatic moments I had growing up, but also, you know, the very, positive, loving moments I had that keeps me hoping for a better future.
I mean, to go from Wuhan to Texas, that's one heck of a culture shock.
For sure.
Oh, especially when it comes to food. I mean, how did you even embrace the moment?
Oh man, I remember when I first came over from Wuhan and I was put in kind of a kindergarten class, and I didn't even touch the food that was served at the school because I was so unfamiliar with it. And at one point, I think I just wasn't eating enough to where my hair started falling out. And the doctor was like, "Oh, my mom." He was like, "Your kid's malnourished. Like, what's happening?" And then that's when she realized I wasn't eating at school. So she would pack me Wuhanese dishes that she would cook herself. And there's this one scene in the book where, you fast forward to middle school, and I'm holding a plate of my mom's like home cooked dumplings, and then everyone kind of makes fun of me for it, and say that like it smells bad, and my school is not predominantly Asian, and then I actually just kind of get bullied out of loving my culture's food, and then I end up throwing it away and like not eating it, and so it's interesting that contrast between like moving over, not being used to the U.S. food so much that I was like basically malnourished, to later on like trying to shame away my own culture's food, and like just how universal that is as a third culture kid.
You're not afraid to talk about the different mindsets that a young adult goes through when it comes to the changes and stuff like that. I mean, you even have some part of the story includes a nightmare and what it took to even draw these pictures, because I mean you can look at it and feel exactly what you're going through. I mean, I invite readers to start at the beginning, but man, if you thumb through and really kind of connect up with the pictures, there really is some emotion here.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. There are some pages that honestly took me days and weeks to draw because, I'm basically ripping off that Band-Aid I put for myself of these more traumatic and more conflicting moments where, as a teenager, there's just so much like angst and emotion around like, who am I as a person? Like,
Mm-hmm.
when will I be popular? When will I be accepted? When will my family like me and my friends? Right. And so I'd like rip off that Band-Aid and dig back deep into some of those darker thoughts. And that nightmare scene you talked about, not exactly a spoiler, but essentially that nightmare scene is me, I guess, like confronting my inner psyche.
Yep.
That is depicted as like this giant menacing looking rabbit. And there's a lot of symbolism of rabbit in Chinese culture. And when readers read the book, they'll realize what the symbolism is. But that rabbit kind of symbolizes that little like demon inside of myself, but ultimately is also that identity that's like screaming to come out and like stop being suppressed by who I was.
Did you take the story from journals? Because I mean, I write words that go into paragraphs. I don't get the opportunity to do what you do with graphics. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? In the way of, did the story come first, or did the pictures come first, the graphics?
I, in my mind, I think in pictures, but when I write it down, I actually start off with a script,
Mm-hmm.
and that makes it easier for me, so I can get the story down on paper and be able to revise it with my editor and like really understand the whole like character arc, right? That like I kind of go through as a teenager. But like as I was doing this, I'm constantly doodling on the side of like, okay, here's how I wrote this page down in words, but here's how I think it might look, just on paper when I draw it out.
How do you like that feeling as a creative mind, that when you're being called to bring something forward, such as Messy Roots and stuff like that, it's almost like you want to sit down with your family saying, okay, I'm going to go write this book. I'll see you in a couple of years. You're going to see me in your home, but it's not going to be the me that you think you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Writing this book took almost 2 years from beginning to end, and I definitely feel like a completely different person coming out of it later. And thankfully, I did include my family for some of the early brainstorming process, where I got to have, like, for the very first time in our lives, just kind of very open conversations about their own experiences when they immigrated over, and talking about just like how hard and stressful it was for my dad to, worry about losing his job and then getting the whole family deported as a result because we didn't have our green cards. Stories that otherwise were also very suppressed because my family don't like talking about the hard, traumatic moments. But it was like, I always say it's kind of like therapy 2.0, where you're able to kind of like uncover that and, write it 1,000 times on paper and draw 1,000 times on paper for strangers to look at. And then by the end of it, you feel like you've really fully accepted all parts of yourself, the good, bad, ugly, beautiful, everything.
And when you write like that, one of the things that's refreshing is the fact that now your soul is empty. So therefore, now you can try new things. Did you explore any other things after the book was finished? Because all of a sudden you were like spit clean as what you were going through.
Yeah. I mean, afterwards, I did feel really great. Obviously, like, I'm still constantly working myself day by day, but afterwards I traveled a lot kind of around the world. I went to Taiwan, where I got to like connect back to my roots and culture again. I went to Portugal and other places just alone to really put myself out there and like, remind myself how to be like a strong kind of independent person in the world. And then I also started writing my second book, also with HarperCollins, that hopefully will be coming out in a few years. And this one is fiction, and that was on purpose
Laura, I got to ask you a question, only because you were talking about the rabbit and the nightmare and things like that just a little bit ago. When you look at the front cover of this book, up there on the moon, right behind your character, is that a rabbit?
Yes, that is.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Mind blown. Yeah.
See, and that's what readers need to take away from this book is the fact that there really is a story here and there is symbolism.
Yeah, I put a ton of motifs throughout, and I'm someone who loves it when a reader can read the same thing 3 or 4 times and catch new things each time. So I highly encourage readers take multiple reads because you'll catch these little Easter eggs I put in each of the panels.
Wow, Laura, you got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Thank you so much, Arrow. I had a great time chatting.
Excellent. Well, you be brilliant today, okay?
Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.